Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored today at the City Club to have with us the editor of the Chicago Tribune, the editorial editor of the Chicago Tribune, Bruce Dold, the political writer Rick Pearson, and this fella from Tacoma Park, Maryland, Clarence Page, please. We are going to start off with each of our panelists, 5 minutes, how they see the 2012 presidential election as of today, and each of you is allowed only one Herman Cain joke. If you want to pass, you could pass and then pass it along. You can get 2 or you get 3, but one apiece, please. Starting off, because the City Club is innovative, we're going in alphabetical order. Bruce Dold. Give him a round of applause.
I gotta hold it. Thank you. First, I've got to give a hat tip to Basil Talbot. When I was a punk reporter trying to find the bathrooms at City Hall, Basil was one of the guys I watched and learned a whole lot from about covering politics in Chicago. It's really nice to see him here. I just, 2 things I want to bring up. First, 4 years ago this week, John McCain came to the editorial board of the Chicago Tribune, and I couldn't scare up a quorum to spend any time with him. McCain came in, we spent an hour with him, we talked about foreign policy, we talked about defense policy, we talked a lot about immigration, and at the end of it he was kind of mad. He said, "You didn't ask me about the presidential campaign." And it was true that we hadn't, because we wrote him off. So just think about that. At that same point of the 2008 race, everybody had written off John McCain. He came in with one person, he had one staffer, we think it may have been an intern, traveling with him at the time. Bang, you get Iowa, you get New Hampshire, you get the thing rolling, and a few months later, we endorsed him in the Republican primary. He went on and became the nominee. So I think anybody who tries to flatly predict anything about this race, including all of us here today, take it with a huge grain of salt, because the thing will change so fast. Who knows, maybe John McCain will be the nominee. I'm going to throw out one possible arc on the race, because I thought this was really interesting. I had a long talk last week with David Axelrod before doing this, and David had a lot of interesting things to say about the race, but one really surprised me, and that was he compared Barack Obama to George W. Bush. He said that this race could be much like the 2004 election for president. He said he understands that a lot of people are not happy with the decisions that Barack Obama has made. Their hope, their maybe belief, is that people will give Obama credit for making decisions in the way that they gave Bush credit for making decisions that were often unpopular. And so they see an arc, Osama bin Laden is no longer with us. The president staked his presidency on that decision. Libya, tough decisions, they say, when the country was looking at possibility of a depression as he was coming into office. So they've actually linked themselves to George W. Bush, and they look at Mitt Romney and they think, John Kerry, we know this scam. Can't make a decision, doesn't stand for anything. Will people say, we're not really sure that we trust, we know we don't like him, we're not sure that we really trust his decision-making, too. So just interesting way to look at the race, and whether you have a president in a difficult situation who gets some points for being there and making tough decisions, and a candidate you don't trust. Now, I think there are a couple of big things working against that scenario. One is that unemployment when George W. Bush was reelected was 5.4%. Wouldn't that be nice? And it had been pretty steady over the course of a year. Where are we now? 10%, 9%, 10% in Illinois, 9% across the country. So a much more difficult economic situation for this president than the last president. And I also think in terms of the base, that George W. Bush kept, particularly the evangelical Christian base, but the conservative base rallied with him through thick and thin. And I think we've seen over the course of the last year that the left is not terribly pleased with Barack Obama. A lot of polling showing that there's a more enthusiasm on the other side to vote against him than there is in his base to vote for him. So, thank you.
Okay, very good. Not that I would ever correct the editor of the Tribune, because editorial editor. But remember, if Ohio would have voted the other way, Axelrod would have needed a new analogy.
They're still counting the votes out here, Paul.
Yeah, there's still people in line. Clarence Page, go right ahead.
Thank you. I should press that. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be back in a real city again. First of all, thank you for that very warm welcome. Far more than I deserve. And thank you, Bruce, for leading off the panel this year, so I can follow up. You didn't mention in the 4 years ago this month on the Democratic side who the inevitable candidate was going to be, Hillary Clinton. So we are saved immense embarrassment by the fact that this panel was not held 4 years ago, so that you can all not go back, hey, you guys told us blah, 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 but maybe since we passed last year's audition, you'll invite us back next year, or we'll actually have to wait until after November next year to be embarrassed again. But I think the thing that strikes me about our elections, Eisenhower said war will always astonish you, and elections will always surprise you. We are about to go into a primary season where it's very hard to predict exactly what's going to go on. In fact, the news changes so rapidly. Just this morning, the latest word, some of you know, there apparently is a fourth woman claiming to have been harassed by Herman Cain. Excuse me. There's a news conference scheduled for this afternoon, maybe even as we speak, and it's going to be led by Gloria Allred. Yes, I can tell by your reaction, you know the Hermanator is in trouble now. But I think it says something about the nature of this campaign season, that this story was broken not by the New York Times or the Washington Post, but by TMZ and Radar. Which, for those of you who are media or gossip astute, who stay around and watch, Entertainment Tonight after you've seen the evening news, those are well-known celebrity gossip sites. This has now entered the pop culture. So I think my prediction would be that the Hermanator will be back to his former profession, which is being a motivational speaker, where you can tell people that if you haven't got a job, it's your own fault, and they applaud you. And no jokes other than 999 sounds like what Fräuleins used to tell me in Germany when I was in the Army. Okay, thank you. I've been saving that all weekend, Paul, so thank you.
Clarence, it's always good to have you back in your hometown. This
Thank
is
you.
You couldn't do that in Washington.
I'm not finished. In all seriousness, because of the state of the Republican candidacy, as we can see, they are running out of candidates who are not Mitt Romney. This is creating something of a crisis on the right, so I've decided it's my patriotic duty to declare my candidacy for the Republican nomination. It's not official yet. I'm Bruce. I just want you to know.
Just don't count on an endorsement.
Keeping my bases covered. Indeed, we can't expect miracles, but I was actually moved by Ann Coulter last week, and by her declaration that our blacks are so much better than their blacks. So I decided to do my part to prove her right once again. Other than that, prediction-wise, I expect when all the dust has settled and we have sold enough newspapers that Mitt Romney will get the Republican nomination. The one thing that will prevent that from happening would be an unexpected strength from the Tea Party right, who have proved to be unpredictable in the past, and they may have enough strength to be able to give us a candidate who is more to their liking. I'm still hanging in there, though, with the inevitability of Mitt. Republicans following past tradition, I think, will go back to the one who's got the most seniority and who seems the most inevitable, and most of all has the best chance of beating Barack Obama. On the Barack Obama side, all of you being good, loyal readers of my column, you know, several weeks back, I pointed out that Barack Obama has had amazing luck in his career. Those of us who remember how quickly he rose from the state Senate to the White House, thanks to bad fortune on the part of his opponents. It seems to be holding up so far, amazingly well. So I haven't written off Obama for next year. The jobless rate just inched down a bit from 9.1 to 9. If between now and September he can get that anywhere in the neighborhood of 8, I think he's got excellent re-election chance. Otherwise, he's got to get at least moving in that direction. My math is so good. That's why I left engineering and went into journalism. But I think that would be that would be my long-range prediction for next year, and we will see who wins in November, and hopefully you'll invite us back to either praise or curse at us for our predictions. Thank you very much.
Rick Pearson, you're up.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Just so you know, I'll let these guys make the predictions because I'm a reporter, and frankly, the person I trust most with predictions is somebody else at Tribune Company who makes a lot more money than I do, Tom Skilling. So, and deserves it, trust me. I also thought, you know, if you all got a chance to see the Sunday paper where we did our 1 year out kind of look ahead, I don't really need to say anything because it was all there. But it's really hard to believe, though, that it was 3 years ago that victory rally out in Grant Park with the thousands of people that were there. And there was just this kind of energy and excitement that was going on then. And then you look at today and you see this optimism and energy disappeared and evaporated. And it's kind of like the headwinds that Obama talks about with the economy. Those are the kind of the headwinds that are facing his reelection as well. Everybody knew that for a second-term reelection, that regardless of factors like the economy and everything else, it'd be hard to capture that kind of enthusiasm again in a reelection campaign. But as these guys have touched on, some recent polling suggests that enthusiasm deficit is very significant, particularly when you look at Democrats and Republicans. Gallup shows nationally 56% of voters who consider themselves Republican are either extremely or very enthusiastic about voting next November. And that compares to 48% of Democrats, 41% of independents. But if you drill down just a little bit deeper and you look at the dozen swing states that are going to be key in determining the election, you've got 6 in 10 Republicans saying that they're enthusiastic about voting, less than half of Democrats saying that, and less than 4 in 10 of independents. And of course, independent vote is always a key towards winning a state and winning an election. Now, of course, we're a year away. People aren't necessarily as focused in on the true battle of presidential politics, but these numbers are extremely problematic for the White House. Obama's going to need a very strong turnout from his base and help from independents to offset the push among Republicans. When you look at some of these swing states, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, you find that in the polls right now that Romney leads Obama, although it's very close. And even, I guess, more surprising is that in these swing states that Obama barely is out ahead of Herman Cain, which I think is a direct reflection of this kind of enthusiasm gap here, that Republicans are just ready to go. The other part of this kind of swing state issue is that 90% of swing state voters rate the economy as, at best, fair, if not poor. Nearly 3/4 of voters in those states say the economy is getting worse, and 60% say they're worse off than they were 3 years ago. Now, you know, those are all just, I think, very telling signs as we move ahead. And to me, the major thing to watch is always the independent voter. I mean, they're the ones that ultimately are the ones that get convinced by whatever the advertising is, whatever the campaign themes are. But they also are like every other voter, and they vote their pocketbook. And the question really becomes now, how much better or worse does the economy go? And also looking at the Republican side. There's the old adage that to win a Republican primary, you run to the right just as a Democrat wins a Democratic Party by running to the left. But I think the question ultimately comes, whoever the Republican nominee is, because of kind of the attempts by the GOP to tap into the Tea Party factor and the activists there, whether the Republican Party and Republican nominee goes so far to the right that independents will get turned off by that and end up going to Obama.
Okay. First question, anonymous. Where is it? Anonymous. We have to nominate a candidate before we talk about the general. The first five: Iowa caucus, New Hampshire primary, South Carolina primary, Florida primary, Nevada caucus. First week in February is Nevada caucus. How does the calendar impact the candidates running for the GOP nomination? Good question.
Well, I think, first of all, let's just look at most immediately at Iowa. That's the caucus date is January 3rd, so it'll be another wonderful New Year's in Des Moines. And if you've never been there for New Year's, it was quite a thrill because it was the caucus was the same date 4 years ago. Right now, when you look at Iowa, you have the fact that within the Republican Party and Republican voters in Iowa, you have very much a Christian evangelical right influence there. But surprisingly, despite, you know, you look to Ames and the straw poll in August that Michelle Bachmann won, and now you see in Iowa polling, I think she's down to single digits, like 7%. And we've kind of had this flavor of the month kind of thing nationally as well as in Iowa. But right now, you're still seeing there kind of what you're seeing nationally too with Mitt Romney, that he's, if not in front, he's right there. And the Romney camp is actually trying to figure out whether Iowa, a state that they were really just going to dip their toe in, that if they could get a run, expecting then to win the week after in New Hampshire, and effectively try to wrap up the nomination with 2 quick victories. But of course, if he doesn't win in Iowa and he sets expectations high for Iowa, that could also impact the week later in New Hampshire. So that's kind of I think kind of the tiptoeing that the Romney campaign is doing right now.
Either of you care to?
You know, unfortunately, it takes Illinois out of play. You know, we moved up 4 years ago to help Barack Obama win the nomination. We've moved back to March 20th now. So when you see these candidates in Chicago, they're shaking down people for money. They're not campaigning here. So most likely that race will be over before they get here.
That's possible, although as much as, you know, some people have written off Rick Perry already, and I think your warning holds true about, I don't know that you can write anybody off at this stage, but I would say you can't especially write off Rick Perry just given the bankroll that he's got. And that's one of those where you could end up with a long, drawn-out campaign fight that would resemble actually the Obama-Clinton battle for the nomination 4 years ago on the Democratic side. And Illinois, at that point, could become relevant because of the large number of Republican delegates, and we all know how much we love to count those delegates to determine the nominee.
I agree with your assessments. The thing I notice about Iowa and New Hampshire is being states that operate with real retail politics, states whose voters feel personally offended that you would want them to vote for you without having been over to their house 2 or 3 times. And also 2 states that love to surprise everybody, having rather eccentric tastes. In the past, having given us President Jesse Jackson, President Mike Huckabee, President Pat Buchanan. I don't think we're really going to get serious till we get to Florida. But that was what saved John McCain last time. It also derailed Rudy Giuliani. So I think I'm expecting quite possibly the kind of scenario that you mentioned. We might have a case of Romney versus Rick Perry that would be similar to Romney versus John McCain. The one difference, Perry has shown a tendency to self-destruct, which just entertains us all immensely on the campaign trail. And if he can pull himself together and show he's really ready for national politics in time, he could make a long run out of it. Otherwise, again, I go back to my default Romney position.
Okay, gentlemen, we like a little terser answers. We have a lot of questions. Tough being an editor. Tough being an editor. We have 2 questions that are basically the same. The M&M questions. One from Ed Miller. Where are you, Ed? Raise your hand. Way in the back. Ed, you're going to be moving on up with this question. Very good. And, of course, our own Ed Mazer, you met before. The Suffolk University poll that shows Senator Rubio running as a vice president with any Republican candidate. Republican candidate defeats Obama in Florida. However, if Obama trades Biden for Hillary Clinton, Obama wins. What are the chances of the swap? Biden for Clinton and a player to be named later.
Well, the Washington conventional wisdom, I'd say, these days is that Obama's not going to switch. He's shown a real reluctance to ease people out even when he should, and that he loves loyalty and is likely to want to hang on to Biden. And Hillary Clinton has said repeatedly that she wants to get out of politics, at least for a while. So we'll see if she sticks by that. And Rubio as well has said he doesn't want to be considered for VP, but people have a way of being persuaded.
Yes.
Actually, I think Obama was working on that and was this close to getting Theo Epstein, and the Ricketts snatched him away to negotiate the trade. So,
by the way, if that was a real swap, I think another reason why he wouldn't do it is because you imagine swapping that and Biden becomes Secretary of State. The French government would. Can you imagine him doing that? Of course. All right, well, this question isn't really one of the great questions, but anyone who's ever run for mayor automatically moves right on up. Herb Sohn, where are you, Herb? Where are you? Come on, Herb, that's why you didn't get many votes. You got to raise your hand. All right. Who will win? No. Will the Democrats maintain control of the U.S. Senate in 2012? Okay, moving on. Cowards die many times. You guys don't, just a guess. Wow.
Last time I was asked that in 2000, I said 50-50. It turned out it was 50-50, and nobody remembered. So why stick my neck out?
All right, well, I said it wasn't a great question, but if you've been a mayoral candidate, or like David Orr, mayor for a week, then you get automatic privileges.
The election cycle works against them, right? They've got a lot of vulnerable seats, so the Democrats have trouble in the Senate. You could argue maybe one advantage in the House is the Republicans have a lot of freshmen, but with remapping, that's all up in the air. There are a whole lot of people running in unfamiliar territory. But I think, and Clarence probably knows this better though, that the map is a difficult row in the Senate because of the seats that happen to be up in this cycle.
Yeah. Those are the seats that were won in 2006, which was a big Democratic year. All right, Christy Hefner. Where are you, Christy? There she is. What do you think the impact will be on presidential and congressional elections of the new push to make voter registration and voting more difficult? Not in Illinois, of course, right, Jill Swick? Yeah, not with Jesse White, but in other places. Make it more difficult. I assume you're speaking of like in Ohio and places like that? Don't all jump at once. Anyone?
I guess there are two pieces, or at least two pieces of that. I'm really bothered by the efforts to trim back early voting. I think early voting has been a success. People like to do it. I don't know that you see great turnout numbers from it, but just making it easier to legally vote when it's convenient for you. I love going to polling places. I love talking up the judges and all that, but I vote early now. I vote when it's convenient, and there's been a move against that. I think it's been disappointing. The sense that Republicans are trying to target college campuses and make it more difficult for students to vote is disappointing. I'm not really opposed to saying that you ought to have some proof to show that you are legally registered to vote. So, to the extent that they're demanding real proof of that, I mean, anybody who's been around Chicago knows what it was like in the great old days of rampant vote fraud. So, I tend to pick what the Republicans have been doing. Some of it is mischievous and some of it is legit.
Yeah, as you know, that there is a lot of pressure. One real problem with the voter ID requirement is so many people don't have the ID that's required. This can vary from state to state, but some states are saying you've got to have an actual birth certificate. I know my own father-in-law doesn't exist, apparently, because his birth certificate was one of those that was somehow lost, stolen, or strayed in some Alabama courthouse years ago. It's a very common story with a lot of senior citizens. And this is the kind of thing I've been wondering why there hasn't been more of a revolt on the part of seniors, that their vote could be diminished. A lot of other Black and Hispanic folks, a lot of low-income folks are disenfranchised. This can vary drastically from state to state. There are arguments on the other side who say that it's all a wash between those who vote liberal or those who vote conservative. So I think we're going to possibly see this become more of an issue as this year goes on. But other than that, it's very hard to say what the exact impact is going to be.
Okay. Joyce Saxon, where are you, Joyce? Good to have her back. City Club board member, been on the DL for a while, but she's back in action. Good to have you back. All right. Joyce's question: What will be the result of the Wall Street occupiers in this coming election? These are easy questions, guys. True and false.
I've talked to a few Democrats about that, and I think they're really worried about it. About a month ago when Rahm Emanuel came into the editorial board, and we talked to him about Occupy Wall Street, and he made a very clear distinction about sort of feeling the anguish, feeling the pain, and not buying into the rhetoric of retribution, the vengeance. So I think the Democrats look at that, they say, well, this is part of the base. We do need to understand broader, there's a lot of anxiety around the country, not just the folks who are in the park. The prescriptions still seem to be kind of hazy for them, and they do want to be careful about looking that they're not, one man's class warfare. They want to be careful that they don't look like they're trying to target certain folks in the way that OWS has.
Yeah, there's been a lot of comparisons made between the occupiers and the Tea Party. They both are inspired by anger. They both pride themselves on not having a strict agenda or a lengthy agenda beyond a couple of slogans, and they also don't, they pride themselves on not having organized leadership or structure, much like Will Rogers' Democratic Party. But the one difference is that the Tea Party's timing was such that they could disrupt the health care debate. They could push cost cutting and tax and spending to the top of the agenda. The occupiers have brought the wealth gap into the national conversation. Early polling shows them to be more popular than the Tea Party, but that's very volatile. I wouldn't put too much stake in that. They can make a difference for this election if they do it the old-fashioned way like a Tea Party did, push candidates, push an agenda that's going to lose them some supporters but galvanize others. Is there enough time for that to happen? It's hard to say. It depends on certainly the Democrats. Obama and Biden have given enough vocal support, as much support as they can without actually going on sleeping in a tent. But will this translate beyond that into an agenda? I think what they've got to do, the old-fashioned way, organize young people, organize folks who are disenchanted out there, and get them behind their candidates.
Yeah, I'd agree with Clarence on that, and having gone out to see some of the more Illinois, for example, with the Tea Party, when the Tea Party movement actually began, because of our early primary, that had we'd already kind of voted before the Tea Party could have a true impact, I think, on a lot of Illinois politics in the beginning. Here, and so you have Republicans in a number of these Tea Party organizations trying to tap that energy and enthusiasm, and I think, as I said, that's kind of reflected in some of that enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats. With Occupy Wall Street, you are starting to see some signs of that kind of attempt by political forces to co-opt. And most notably, I think you're seeing that with the fact that you have public employees unions like Service Employees International, a very big political force, now trying also to kind of tap into that kind of energy and motivation and move it in a political direction. But I don't see it right now as moving in a political direction absent the true kind of organizers, which you get from a union.
Yeah, well, moderator doesn't speak. Moderator has I agree with most of that, though I'm not speaking. But I'm not speaking.
Go ahead.
Well,
we can give you a dispensation, Paul.
if Barack Obama wasn't an African American, there'd be a lot more political activity on Wall Street occupiers. How's that for a controversial statement? You'd have Dennis Kucinich running around, or Ralph Nader, or all those heavy hitters. They can't do it. So what do? They beat the goddamn drum. Judy Henske, 1961. Okay. No one knows the Salvation Army song? So, there you go. I know, Zorn. You know it. You know it. All right.
That was Eric Zorn's hand that went up, ladies and gentlemen.
That was it, Eric. Very good. Judith Turk, the Parisian chanteuse. Where are you, Judith? Where are you, Judith? Raise your hand. There, Judith, you got to stand up. You're not exactly, don't want to go there. No, Herman Cain has made height no longer, can't discuss it. All right. Okay, would the economy change, including unemployment? Would the economy change and unemployment go down if we just bought in the USA? They're not all softballs, guys. Come on.
What can you buy in the USA?
I don't know.
I mean, you go to Walmart or whatever. Everything's made overseas.
After reading Suskind's book, Debt. That's all you can buy.
Even the presidential bus, that came out of Canada. So,
but it was assembled here, right?
Yes.
Well, we'll pass on that one. Okay. Reuben Hedlund, where are you, Reuben? Longtime City Club member. What is the likelihood that a credible independent will emerge as a candidate for president in 2012? Good question.
I think that could happen. There's an organization called Americans Elect that's trying to create a web-based nominating process, and they supposedly have access or close to access to more than a dozen states on the ballot. I don't know what kind of funding they've got. I wonder if there'd be a Tea Party candidate, if Romney is the nominee. The Tea Party has been railing, they were railing first against the Republican Party for losing its bearing. The biggest criticism of Mitt Romney is that he's not a true Republican. He flip-flops, he's all over the map. He's one place on Ohio in trade unions. He comes in when he sees the polling showing that Ohio is about to vote that law down, and he sandbags John Kasich, and then he turns around the next day and he's back on board. So I think just like the Naderites didn't really care who got elected. They were willing to stick with their candidate. In 2000, he got 2 3/4% of the vote, and arguably, probably more than arguably, cost score the election. I could see the Tea Party folks who are not happy with Romney saying, look, the principle is more important than who gets elected, and launching some sort of a campaign.
America Elect is talking about doing this by web, by internet, which if they pull that off, Ron Paul will be the nominee.
Rick?
Well,
Ron Paul's people are very good with the web, with web voting.
And in fact, won a little fundraising straw poll in Illinois based on their online voting.
Yeah, but it
not
costs
in person.
$5 to vote. If that had been Richard J., they'd be calling it, fraud. On the nerve of that.
There might be
good.
some who suggest you get paid $5
I
to
see.
vote instead of having to pay it.
I see the difference now.
Yes, thank you.
They
But-
saw Ames had a good thing going and said, why not?
You would think, given kind of where we stand in politics and the anger and the economy the way it is, that this would be perfect to foment an independent candidacy. But I'm not sure that I really do see one. I mean, I would think, and I agree, Clarence, I think if somebody were to be that candidate, it would be Ron Paul. Can still raise a significant amount of money, could certainly cost a Republican an election. And I think certainly his followers, as we've seen, are very motivated, and I think could actually tap into some of that Tea Party support.
The odds are 100 to 1 they could get on the ballot in Illinois, though. Internet or no internet. This is Illinois. We like to keep it simple.
He'll get on the ballot, but they may not have any delegates to
I'm
run.
talking about the general election. We don't need those stinking third parties. I think they need 300,000 signatures, right? Plus the Vatican. Okay, moving on. Myrna Holton, where are you, Myrna? There you are. One of ours. Good for you. From Roosevelt University, right here. What is the importance of the Latino vote in 2012? And what is the position of the group? How's this? Let's leave it at the first question. What is the importance of the Latino vote in 2012? A minute for each of you. We're on the bullet round now. Bruce.
Obviously very important. It was interesting the last election go-around that the most successful statewide Latino candidates were Republican Latino candidates. You look in New Mexico, even Arizona, Florida, and not necessarily with a majority of the Latino vote were they elected. So you're seeing, it's a difficult vote to predict, but you're seeing much more impact in Illinois as the Latino population moves into broader areas, and I think map makers had to really account for that. So obviously, and certainly in key states like Florida, just huge.
Clarence.
Yeah, the Hispanic vote is very important and getting more important. And it is true, it's bipartisan. The polls show Obama's Hispanic support has dropped significantly since his election in '08. However, many Hispanic voters have been alienated by the anti-immigrant fervor on the Republican side. Excuse me, anti-illegal fervor on the Republican side. Got to be politically correct. Herman Cain's electrified fence didn't go over real big in Pearson, there is a sense that Obama will still be able to have enough outreach to make up for the losses that he has had, again, with the help of his opponents. However, Mitt Romney, I think, will be considerably less objectionable if he wins the nomination. Again, it's a vote that's going to be very important, and some of the rising stars like Mario Rubio has got a great future, I think.
I agree. It's an important vote. It keeps getting more important as we just see the growth patterns going here. But I do think that one of the main drivers of this is just going to be immigration policy, and you will find, I think, a number in the Latino community that it's a single issue vote.
Okay, we have two more questions, and before I go on, Bill Hood from American Airlines just showed me the blurb on one of those smartphones. The woman who came forward, you'll read it yourself. I have my wife here, and and she and Ann went to Maria High School, and I don't use that kind of language, but This is not kiss and tell. So if you're a Cainite, maybe time to make a little shift. Here we go. Brian Israel, River North Residents Association, the RNRA, as we like to call it. On 60 Minutes last night, Jack Amberhoff, one of those Washington-type guys, Clarence, talked candidly about the fact that he had significant influence over 100 congressional offices. I think it was being modest. Do you see any opportunity for meaningful campaign finance reform? Remember, we have a president who swore in 2008 that he was going to take public financing and then raise $700 million. Anyone jump on it?
No.
Good answer.
No.
Good answer.
No.
Okay. 999. You know, many people will not remember much of what happened today, but 999 has gotten a whole new thing. All right, now we have one of the great questions from Charlie Mangini, our trumpeter and par excellence. This is a good one. This is the, I'm not even hyping it, I'm just going to read it. If you can choose two candidates, no, excuse me, let me say the whole thing verbatim. If you can choose two candidates to run against Obama in 2012 from the last 50 years, who would they be and why? Let me read that again. You could say, now, for those of you who are members of the City Club, you're not going to get this at the Executive Club. This is a City Club question. You can choose two candidates to run against Obama in 2012 from the last 50 years. We'll make it 60. Let's make it 1952. They don't have to be Republican or Democrat, just the two candidates. Who would they be and why?
Clarence Page, and it doesn't matter who the other one is.
I got the endorsement.
KUKD. Absolutely. No, can you think? I'm stumped. That's why I'm going like this.
How about Jack Kennedy?
Jack Kennedy versus
Barack Obama.
It could be a game.
Well, I mean, you kind of look at the youth enthusiasm, a little return to Camelot, that kind of what I think a lot of people saw in the election of Obama and hasn't borne fruit.
Well, I thought about John Kennedy, too, because he's so much a model for Barack Obama. Even Caroline spoke eloquently to this, how reminiscent he was. And wasn't it Harry Truman that said something about why vote for a phony Republican when you can get a real one? Why vote for the stand-in for John Kennedy if you could vote for the real John Kennedy? So it just seems like a natural.
Bruce Coward.
I'm sticking with Clarence.
By the way, Joyce, I think this could be a great contest with the Tribune. Two candidates, who would you pick? Either party. Make one in a primary and one in a general. And the prize would be a Roosevelt University mug. Oh, you'd get thousands of people. How about a giant round of applause for our people?